Hello and welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be talking to you about fuel additives. So my background is that I've been working with manufacturers, car manufacturers, for over 20, nearly 25 years, and beyond that working in the motor trade for 35 years. So I've got a bit of experience in this, and on my channel recently I've been reviewing some of these products to see if they're any good. And to be honest, from the perspective of a manufacturer, we don't recommend that you use any additives, and that's because a car manufacturer can't quantify how these products are going to work within its engines. And the other reason that they're not going to recommend them is that, generally speaking, a manufacturer will have a combustion engine sponsored by a fuel company. So it might be Shell. Shell might offer Joe Bloggs Motors 4 million to develop a new diesel engine, that'll be a loan essentially, so that manufacturer will have to pay back that money, but it means that the manufacturer doesn't have to stump up the cash initially to make the commitment to that combustion engine. They can go through the development process, and then when they sell the cars with that engine in, they recoup the costs, and the oil company recoups the money that it's made through sales of fuel, and keeps the whole combustion engine narrative going. So that's how the system works. But the reason that you should or would want to use an additive is that with fuels, they all have to meet a specific standard. So I get a lot of commenters saying, why are you using cheap supermarket fuels? Now in the UK, and it will be the same around the world, all fuels have to meet a British standard and possibly a European standard, and those standards are actually, when you go to a filling station, they're on the pump and on the back of the actual fuel. So the fuel manufacturers are very defined about what that they can put into the fuel, how much detergent they have to mix into it, how much of the raw fuel they can put into it, and other additives they may put into it, like actual sort of oils for upper cylinder lubrication. So that's the reason why all the fuels that you get at the pump are practically going to be the same, with the exception of certain fuels will have some cetane boosters and some extra detergents in them, and these will be promoted as a super fuel and be generally more expensive. But they are going to be limited to how much they can put into that, because there is a standard that they're working to. So when you go down the additive route, you're making that decision to change the fuel from the European or the British or the US federal standard to something that you want to use. And these additives do it in different ways. So the Redex is primarily detergents, but also some upper cylinder lubricants, and then these two here, the super diesel from Mannol and the DPB, they have detergents in there, but they also use a cetane booster. I've also reviewed liqui moly, which also uses a cetane booster, and they basically raise the explosive element of the engine. So when you use these two, you do notice that there's an increase in performance, because you basically got a more combustible fuel going through, so you are going to get better fuel economy and you are going to get better performance because you're burning a richer fuel. However, the engine will adapt. All modern engines use a closed loop system to tune the engine. So air coming into the engine gets put into the engine injects fuel in at a correct ratio, burns it, and then the exhaust will then sample the emissions coming out, and it will tune how much fuel it's adding to the engine based on the burn that's coming out the back end. So initially you are going to see some boosts in this because it's going to take a while for the ECUs to adapt to a higher firing fuel. That may not last if you continue to use these additives. If you always use this additive, the engine will tune itself to a different state, so it's not quite so combustible. The reason being is that if you burn the engine too hot, you could damage things like the sensors in the exhaust, the catalytic converters, you could damage the turbo. So the manufacturer will have these profiles set into the engine so to not damage it too much. And that's the other reason why you are taking a risk when you put an additive into the engine, because you're taking it away from what the manufacturer has deemed safe, and they will have spent millions of pounds testing one fuel through the engine to make sure that it has long life, reliability and good performance. And so there's a case for not putting any additives which is why the manufacturers don't recommend additives from the factory. So that's the reason for the pros and cons for it. So hope this video has been useful. If you could like and subscribe, we have got some reviews on some of these products. I'm risking my engines for the benefit of YouTube and for you, the viewer, to see whether we do see any benefits from using these products. And yeah, if you could like and subscribe for future content.